Thank you, everyone, for coming. Now, with this lighting, I feel like I have a preview of what it's going to be like my first night at Guantanamo. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight, the night of a Bernie Sanders debate. I'd like to thank the senator for scheduling it tonight. I mean, no one ever calls, no one ever checks. No, but it is amazing that I was like, wow, I mean, everyone who cares about Bernie is going to be at home watching this at home on TV. So I'm awed that you guys are here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion that we'll have. I like to talk short and do Q&A long, so I hope you guys have lots of questions and comments and insults and all that sort of thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the book and then throw it out to the audience, and we can have a little back and forth. And I'll just sort of explain the origin of this book and show you some pages from it, but so quickly that you won't be able to read them fast enough without actually buying the book or stealing it. And so, yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I know what I'm doing. Anyway, this book is a sequel to the Edward Snowden book. I did this biography of Edward Snowden that came out last year. And that book was a reaction to a criticism that I've received, and probably lots of people like me have received for my entire career, which is, all you ever do, Rall, is criticize. You never say anyone's great. You know, like, who's your heroes? And I always get that question, like, who's your favorite president? I'm like, I don't have any. They're all assholes. It's like, I don't know, Thomas Jefferson, maybe. It's like, oh, would no one know more recent? No. And it's, it's true. I mean, the Snowden book was my 18th book, and all I ever do is bitch. And so, finally with Edward Snowden, we had, in my view, a truly unvarnished American hero, a person who really put it all on the line, old-fashioned, John Wayne style, and was literally faced death, literally faces possible execution if he were to come back to the United States and be prosecuted, certainly a long prison term. Sacrificed his life and his freedom in a way, and his ability to be in his homeland in a way that I couldn't help but be inspired by, because he wanted to let us know about the US government's illegal activities and let us as a people decide whether this was something that we cared about, and if so, how much we cared about. We could have the discussion because we now know these were rumors before. Now they're not rumors, now they're facts, so we can decide what to do about them. So the Edward Snowden book came out, and this being a capitalist system, my publisher called because the book sold pretty well, and he's like, so, hey, got any more heroes? And so I said, Bernie? And he was like, yeah, Bernie. It was like right away. So obviously Bernie Sanders is a different kind of person from Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden is a rebel. He's a man who has literally gone outside of the system to the extent that he's a wanted man and is living in exile in Russia until God knows when. Bernie Sanders is not that man. Bernie Sanders, however, is nevertheless sets an example that I think a lot of people need to emulate, which is that he knew pretty much by the early 1960s the politics that he wanted to pursue and promote, the politics of equality and egalitarianism, and kind of a old-fashioned FDR-style liberalism that these days, and certainly, well, I shouldn't say these days, because I was about to say these days are not much in fashion, but that's apparently not very true, but have not been in fashion for a long time, since the 1960s and 70s. And he has just banged away at this with no success, really, until the country caught up with him. And now he's surfing the wave. And with Edward Snowden, the Edward Snowden story is a story of personal change. He's a guy, he was a right-wing nationalist, pro-Bush libertarian who volunteered to fight in the Iraq War. He didn't get to go. He broke both of his feet if you didn't buy the book. You should buy the book. But there's a change, there's a political arc. I'm not saying he's a wild-eyed lefty now, but there was a political transformation that took place as a result of his journey working in the NSA and CIA and for various contracting agencies. Bernie Sanders has been exactly the opposite. He's been politically and ideologically steadfast all of his life. He's been in the same exact place. It's the country that has changed. And so this book basically begins with something that I was kind of worried about. I thought that a lot of people who read this book might not appreciate it, but critics seem to like it, and most readers seem to like it, which is sort of a prehistory of the Democratic Party from 1972 to the present. And it sort of starts out with the 1972 election of Richard Nixon over George McGovern, which occurred, many people forget, after the Watergate break-in. Nixon carried 49 out of 50 states. And afterwards, the right-wing Southern Democratic wing started to argue that the United States was inherently a conservative country, a country that didn't support McGovern because he was so far to the left. I mean, he wanted socialized medicine, as it was called back then. Today we call that single payer, and it's what most of the world has. And he was considered outside of the political mainstream. At least that's what the argument was on the right wing of the Democratic Party. Now, there was a group called the Center for a Democratic Majority, which then morphed into something called the Democratic Leadership Council, which basically dominated, it has dominated Democratic Party politics throughout the 1980s, 90s, and I would argue the 2000s. The DLC doesn't exist anymore, but both Bill and Hillary Clinton were members of the DLC, which was a center-right coalition of Democrats who felt that, also known as third-way Democrats, who believed that it was important to triangulate the message of the Democratic Party in accordance with polls, and to focus on wedge issues, and to move away from the old FDR New Deal and Harry Truman Fair Deal and LBJ War on Poverty liberal tradition, and move it more into something that looked like Republican light. And the Democratic Party moved steadily to the right throughout the 70s under Jimmy Carter. People don't talk much about how far to the right Jimmy Carter really was, boycotting the Moscow Olympics in the Soviet Union because of the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, which the Carter administration helped provoke. And also just the general move away then that continued even under the Reagan years. The Democrats kept chasing the Republicans to the right. And this kind of culminates with the election of Bill Clinton in 1992, which was deemed, and this is kind of its spin, because it leaves out the whole Ross Perot factor. He ran as an independent. He was a big factor in 1992. But the DLC argued that the election of Bill Clinton in 1992 proved that really they had it right, that they had the magic formula for victory in the Democratic Party. I mean, this was about electing Democratic politicians, but not necessarily promoting traditionally liberal or progressive Democratic principles. So something changed dramatically with the election of Jimmy Carter, and it continued. I mean, there hasn't been a major anti-poverty program passed in the United States, or in fact proposed by a Democratic administration, since the Johnson administration. Carter didn't propose one, Clinton didn't propose one, Obama hasn't proposed one. And Obama was a member of the DLC as well. This has been the 50-yard line of American politics has moved to the right. Of course, the Republicans have been moving to the right too. So everything's, we're talking about on a bandwidth from, far left to far right, objectively, communist to fascist. American politics exists in a very narrow band between Democrat and Republican, which is, by global standards, pretty much a center-right kind of ideology. I mean, Democrats in France would be considered a center-right party. And so this has basically been the way things have been all these years, and that center-to-right line has moved to the right over the last 40, 50 years. And we've just watched this happen. I'm depicting talk a little bit about the insurgent run of Senator Ted Kennedy in 1980 against Jimmy Carter, which is kind of in many ways, by the way, reminiscent of the dynamics that you see this year between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, although I think Bernie Sanders has a better chance to defeat Hillary Clinton than Ted Kennedy had of defeating Jimmy Carter due to the infrastructure. Bill Clinton. Triangulation. This was Dick Morris. He was Bill Clinton's toe-sucking pollster. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It was actually proven that that Bill was with Monica on the phone at the same time that Dick Morris was sucking toe at the same exact time. It's actually kind of fascinating. But anyway, two great tastes that go together. So triangulation was this kind of incredibly simple-minded idea that you have left-wing ideas on the left. You have right-wing ideas on the right. And the middle ground is in the middle. Dick Morris got paid a lot of money for this shit. And then triangulated ideology, as he called it, was where the sweet spot of American politics was. And the way you determined that, what that perfect middle spot was that you polled people to find out how they already believed, what they felt about a particular issue, and then you exactly articulate as a political leader, in quotes, that ideology. And that was Clintonism for 8 years on every single issue. It kind of still is. The Defense of Marriage Act was carefully polled and focus grouped by Dick Morris and Bill Clinton. And, and then these days, under Barack Obama, gay marriage, after gay marriage hit 54% approval nationally, then Barack Obama decided that he'd had an evolution and had changed his mind and believed that gays should have the right to get married. That's very nice of him. And so things started to change, though. After the 2008-2009 global economic crisis, we got into a place where people started to realize that the bar that had been set up so high by Barack Obama's election had resulted in a lot of disappointment. And I submit, my thesis is that this election and the anger you see both on the left and on the right is a direct result of yes we can and hope and change, and that didn't pan out, and people are really pissed because it didn't happen. Apparently no we couldn't, and there was no hope and there was no change. So in 2011, I'm sure many people in this room remember the rise of the Occupy Wall Street movement. I was at Occupy DC myself, and that movement was suppressed quite brutally by the Department of Homeland Security, which was part of the Obama administration, which coordinated local police departments in having each of these encampments ruthlessly shut down in cities across the nation all at the same time. Kind of like Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda likes to do all their attacks at the same time, so it's nice to know we have something in common with them. So around that time, there were people within Occupy, there was a split within Occupy between revolutionaries and reformists. Reformists want to fix the system, leave it the way it is. Revolutionaries want to tear it down and start from scratch. The reformist wing was always focused on, who are the politicians within the system who are actually worthwhile, who've been speaking about the needs of the 99% and talking the right stuff for all these years, even when they were out in the political wilderness. Well, there weren't very many of them. Elizabeth Warren was one, and Bernie Sanders was another. Bernie Sanders' name kept coming up in the Occupy encampments as a possible person who could be supported by reformists as a viable alternative to a revolutionary overthrow. Obviously, we're not going to have a revolutionary overthrow until there's a revolutionary organization, and the U.S. doesn't even really have a left. So I don't see, that's kind of it is a major concern. And Bernie Sanders has been consistently talking about the single most important issue of our time. Well, I shouldn't say that. One of the most important issues of our time, income inequality, which has been around, really pretty much started, depending on which economist you look at. You look at Emmanuel Saez, who's like the guy on income inequality. And it's either from starts around 1968 or 1972, somewhere there, around the late period of the first Nixon administration and the beginning of the end of the Vietnam War. And that's when you start to see this division where all of the improvements, the increases in productivity and in GDP, and start going into the pockets of the elites, the top 1%, the top 0.1 of 1%. And meanwhile, you see the wages of the vast majority of American workers stagnate or just in real terms actually decrease. You see real unemployment increase. So many people are unemployed that they're not even counted anymore because they've stopped looking for work. And Bernie Sanders, he's the person who's got the credibility to articulate this, because he's been one of the only people talking about this year after year after year after year when no one gave a shit. And so here we kind of have this amazing political year, which the mainstream media has focused a lot on the right. I don't really know why. Personally, I don't think that the Republican primaries are nearly as interesting as the Democratic primaries this year. I think they're interesting, but the real action to me is on the left, because we've had like right-wing nativists before, but we haven't had a candidate who is a self-identified democratic socialist really ever, and not since Eugene Debs. And this is a remarkable transformation. It's a big moment. Now, I don't mean to say that Bernie Sanders is a perfect candidate, and the book definitely gets into criticisms about him, but it is more, what's really important about Bernie Sanders is less about him and more about us. We have finally gotten back to a revival of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that has been consistently alienated and disenfranchised and pushed out and marginalized by the mainstream Democratic Party, which has been enthralled by the DLC and its predecessor, the Center for a Democratic Majority. Now you have the progressive traditional values of the Democratic Party reasserting themselves in a very meaningful, serious way. I mean, it is perfectly credible to imagine Bernie Sanders winning the Democratic nomination, even the presidency this year. In terms of this book, people are going to, in terms of how it went about, so Snowden book, I didn't get any cooperation from Snowden until after I finished it. I finished it, I sent a PDF through his lawyer who sent it to Russia, and we got back edits. But Bernie Sanders actually was surprisingly cooperative with me and invited me to Washington to meet with him and interview him. Now, this is a guy who doesn't like to talk about his personal history. He really hates it. He doesn't like talking about anyone's personal history. He doesn't think it's important. The only thing he thinks is important is the ideas, the policies, and the issues. He's a wonk. He does not want to talk about what went wrong in his first marriage, or he doesn't want to talk about like the dishy stuff. But for whatever reason, I was the guy that he agreed to talk to. And I think probably he knew that I cared about the issues too. But where you come from is super important. And with Bernie Sanders, it's really, really personal. His politics are super personal because he grew up in not incredible poverty, but he grew up with two parents who were constantly worrying about whether they'd be able to pay the bills from month to month, who weren't sure if they were going to be able to put dinner on the table every night, and whose parents' marriage almost disintegrated, really, due to the fact that they were constantly fighting over a lack of money. And he saw personally and experienced personally the hardship and horror of just that fear that people have of not knowing whether they're going to be able to pay the rent and their other bills every month. In America, it's kind of a unique thing, you know. I mean, I remember spending time in Thatcher's England with people who were, young people. I went to a punk concert, and I was like, so, I asked that American question, so what do you do? And everyone just laughed at me. And I was like, they're like, do? I'm like, for work. And then they laughed harder. And then they're like, what are you talking about, mate? We're all on the dole. And it was like, duh. But there was no shame there, because actually for them, the dishonor was really on the government, the Thatcher government, that didn't provide young English people with opportunities to find work. Here in the United States, in Trump's language, you're a loser if you lose your job. Like, that's on you. Like, if you come home and have to announce to your family that you've lost your job or that you've had to take a pay cut, like, somehow that's a shame that's on you. It's not on, like, the president who signed a shitty free trade deal that sent your job overseas, or on your stupid boss who made a bunch of poor management decisions that screwed up the company where you work. None of that's, or just on bad luck. It's on you, because this is American culture. It's rugged individualism, the Old West mentality. And this is, I think it's kind of remarkable that given that cultural programming, we've gotten to a stage where people are able to sort of say, no, there is someone to blame. There are people to blame. It's the 1%ers. It's them. They're taking more than their fair share. That's the Bernie Sanders argument, and I think it's a very potent one. I mean, I think he has the issue of this campaign season. So, with that, any questions?
And just a reminder to come up to one of these two mics and keep your questions fairly brief, but.
So if Bernie gets the nomination, what can you do to help him get elected? Another book?
I don't draw that fast. I mean, this is as close as I've been accused of writing a hagiography here as it is, and I don't feel like I did. I mean, as much as look, I really I like Hillary. Hillary. Ah! Shoot me now. I like Bernie Sanders more than I've liked any politician running for office in my life since George McGovern. Okay, I'm going to vote for him. But I'm a journalist, and I have to call him as I see him. And so I'm not going to, I have to maintain an independence of spirit and thought that otherwise I'm not Ted Rall anymore. I'm just not me. So there's things about Bernie that, annoy me. Like, for example, he told me that he's going to continue the drone program. That's bullshit. The drone program should be eliminated completely. It makes America look like shit. He is, I think he was very weak on the Gaza conflict, and I think he should have stepped up more, and he should have made a statement that what Israel was doing in Gaza was wrong. It was. And I also think that, I don't like this new rhetoric like, oh, we have to crush ISIS. Like, relax. I don't like ISIS either, okay? But it's, these are the guys who, ISIS are the guys who kill cartoonists, okay? So I'm not so into them at all. And, I don't want to be, everyone wants to be in a video, but not that video. So, So even no one wants to see the GoPro come out for them, but but the point is that it's funny. This is the first guy who's kind of fit who kind of fits the definition of the candidate that I'm always told I'm supposed to vote for as a Democrat. Like I'm always told like, well, you should vote for Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama because they're not perfect. Who is? But they're good enough, and you can overlook the flaws. It's like look, Hillary Clinton's like beyond not perfect. Okay, I mean she's a hot fucking mess, and like it's like she voted for the Iraq War, and she's like in the pockets of Wall Street. I mean, actually, I can't think of anything she's ever done that I agree with. So I'm like, no, it's like she's not the flawed candidate who I can kind of get behind. Barack Obama voted to fund the Iraq War 6 times while he was running in 2008. He voted to fund that war that he ran against, right? 6 times. So when I look that up, I'm like, yeah, I can't support Barack Obama. But Bernie Sanders actually is the guy who like I can. Yeah, you know what? Like, despite the drone thing and despite the Israel thing, I can look past that. And because I think that he kind of owns some seriously important stuff that we need to focus on. That's like the best I can do, because I'm like this super cynical asshole. So like, if super cynical asshole can sort of get behind Bernie Sanders, like that's the best, that's all I got. Sorry. I mean, I wish I could do better, but what am I going to do to get him elected? I don't know. It's not up to me to get him elected. It's up to you guys to get him elected. But I also think he's going to, I mean, it's just analytically, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but there's no way to know. But this tonight, I just feel like, my God, this guy's got like, the momentum is crazy. I mean, just tonight in the hotel room, I was watching, it's like, well, I was thinking, okay, so he's got this lead in New Hampshire, right? It was 29%. And I'm like, that's crazy. And it's like, Hillary's campaigning there, and she's got all these ads. She'll winnow away at that. That's like natural. That's the natural way of things. And then tonight, it's like, yeah, Bernie widens his lead in New Hampshire to 31%. I'm like, what? It's like, this is different. This year is different. It's like the fix is in for Hillary, and the irony is it not only doesn't help, it actually hurts. And it feels that way. I mean, this is a very corrupt system, but it may not matter this year. So, yeah.
So this is probably me being nosy more than anything else, but I was curious to hear when you sat down to chat with Bernie, what was the thing that surprised you the most?
How funny he was, actually. So what happened was, well, actually, this was kind of a funny story. So I was told to go to Bill Press's house in Washington. And there was, so I had just, I won't get into this story, people can look it up online, but I was feeling pretty bad about myself because I had just gotten like kind of really fucked over by the LA Times, where I had been the cartoonist. And so I'm not feeling super awesome about myself. And for those who know this story, I am filing a defamation lawsuit. But while this, so I show up, and there's all these, Washington, like usual, like there's people from like BuzzFeed, the Washington Post, all these Washington reporters, and we all go in and get this campaign briefing from Bernie, and he was so droll, I mean, he's got this like very sweet, funny sensibility. This like, I have met Bill Clinton, I've met Hillary Clinton. And it's very rare to meet a person in political life who has this sort of warmth and this kind of, maybe it's because he's a New Yorker, and I'm kind of an adopted New Yorker. I've lived there since I was 18. But there was just something where he was like just so funny. And so anyway, the point is, when I got called out, at the end of this briefing, like everyone wants to talk to Bernie, and they're like, motion me, I'm ready for the interview, and they're like, what, who's he? And it's like, that's right, I'm talking to Bernie. And then, so we start, I asked Bernie about lots of serious questions, because I knew from research that he was going to want lots of issue questions first before I got to the personal stuff. But then I asked him about, like, so what did you do as a kid to have fun? And he goes, studied all the time, no fun, never had any fun at all. It was just, and he was just like stickball, baseball. It's like, it's just like always in the street, always. He was very athletic, and it just surprised me how kind of like normal he was. It just seemed like talking to a normal dude. I've met a number of U.S. senators and other people like that who I liked, but not in this way. Like, it's like, this is a dude you can hang out with. It's like, that was the big, for me. And I'm kind of really snotty. I kind of don't like most people, but, so, yeah.
I have a question for you. A person as old as Bernie Sanders has got to have some skeletons in the closet. Do you have any that you know of that you might be able to share with us that we should know about? And the other thing is I hear a lot, Bernie is too old to be president. What do you think?
Okay, so nobody, look, he could have skeletons in the closet, of course. I think Hillary's probably looking for them very, very thoroughly right now. And if they're out there, she's going to find them. Who knows? I mean, it's possible. Frankly, I don't fucking believe it. I mean, it's like, he's worth $600,000, I mean, it's like, I'm worth $600,000, and I'm a cartoonist. I mean, it's like, I've seen his car. I mean, it's like this big. I mean, it's like, Balzac said that, like, behind every great fortune is a crime. I mean, what's behind every, like, big fortune? Not a crime, maybe? I mean, it's, I just don't think so. I don't think that there's skeletons. I think this is, what you see is what you get. I'm a pretty good judge of character. I just don't think so. I mean, Lord knows, if it were there, Hillary would have found it, I think. But in terms of the age thing, I think as someone who has drawn insanely ageist cartoons about, like, say, Bob Dole running for president, where I had, like, fire trucks lined up down the street on his birthday party because of the candles that were going to burn down the White House. It's like, it's a valid question. He would be the oldest American president ever elected. There's a video that's being distributed by Move On by Robert Reich about Bernie, and he kind of addresses this, and he says, like, look, 70s are the new 60s. My mom's 80, and she's got hepatitis. Let me tell you, she'd be a fucking awesome president. And she can run, like, for 4 terms. She's going to bury me. I think it's true. I mean, this guy, he's like, he was a runner. He is a very athletic guy. I asked him, by the way, when he stopped running, he said a few years ago. A few years ago. I'm like, I don't run anymore. It's like, I mean, anything can happen to anybody. Marco Rubio could drop dead of a heart attack tomorrow. Who fucking knows? But, like, I mean, a lot of American presidents have died in office. But, I mean, I would say and certainly we had Ronald Reagan, who was, arguably senile for much of his term in office. I mean, truly. It would have been better if he'd been senile all of his term in office. But he's gonna, I think it's like, look, you have to be existential about this. I mean, actuarially, the average American male lives to be 86 or 87 years old. So he gets at least 2 terms. You know what I mean? Who knows what's gonna happen, but I don't know, and Hillary Clinton's not much younger than he is anyway. So I don't see that as a big issue. If he were running against, like, a Howard Dean, that might be an issue, but he's not. So I don't think there's a big age spread. People, he's released his medical records. He's healthy. He's not like Donald Trump, like who would be apparently the healthiest human being ever elected to any office in the universe ever, but I mean, it's an issue worth considering. You don't want your president to drop dead. And I would I would look at the vice president more carefully with an older president. You know, I mean, one of the reasons I think John McCain lost was, he's super old, he got tortured, and Sarah Palin would be the president. Especially that last part. So, yeah.
Well, I'm really encouraged to hear that you feel he could be nominated and he could win. But what worries me is the opposition from, number one, the right, which is going crazy this year with racism and hatred and fear.
Yeah, that's never
What do you
happened
think
before.
are his chances in a world where the right wing is so loud and so well funded? And what about the remnants of the DLC that took Howard Dean out? I mean, could they come back and with a lot of corporate money from all the obvious places take out Bernie?
Second question first. Hillary is the DLC, and she is working on that. Look, that's the argument, right? The whole like head over heart. I'm a progressive who can actually get things done. Although I keep looking up like what are her big accomplishments. And I'm serious. I mean, like I went on Twitter and I was like, I will give a free signed copy of the Bernie book to anyone who can tell me one major progressive achievement of Hillary Clinton. It's like crickets, okay? It's been 3 days. It's like, there's not one. I mean, there's not one. It's literally like, if you look at, like, you Google, like, lists of Hillary's biggest achievements, Google them. It's like, gave a big speech in Geneva. A speech is not an achievement, it's an activity, okay? I mean, I have lots, this is an achievement right now then. It's like, but, okay, so yeah, they're gonna go, if he gets the nomination, they're gonna go crazy. I mean, you're never gonna see so many like May Day parade videos from the Soviet era, flowing red flags, hammers and sickles, Lenin, Stalin, it's gonna be awesome. And I don't, okay, so maybe this part, no one knows how this goes, right? Nobody knows how this plays out. Is there still enough vestigial Cold War, socialist fear, red baiting bullshit left in our politics that it's going to make a difference? And I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe. I mean, maybe there is. But I mean, like I was taken, like 2 weeks ago, there was a poll of likely Iowa Democratic caucus caucusers. And they said 43% were self-identified socialists and 37% were self-identified capitalists. Iowa. Okay, I'm from Ohio, Ohio, kind of very similar, sound similar, are similar. I was like, that's crazy, okay? Like, it's like, that just freaks me out. So it may be that, I mean, you hear quotes from, especially younger people who are like, hey, what did capitalism ever do for me? And I mean, I'm kind of that way myself, and I'm 52. It may not matter. I mean, it's kind of like, well, if you lost your job, that's capitalism that took your job away. If free trade took your job away, that's capitalism that took it away. It's like if you have a sick parent and you can't pay to take care of them, well, that's capitalism. That means that you can't take care of them. So it may not matter. I mean, in a general election, I mean, I do have this like wonder, like what would happen? Would it be a George McGovern in 1972 scenario all over again? Like, the Hillary people think that, or want to say that. Maybe they're right. I kind of don't think so. I think it's a different world. I mean, I think that fear only works for so long. In this case, 100 years is a nice long run. And I think the 2008 thing, like, people are angry about it, and it's kind of like socialism, social communism. People just get to a certain point where they're just like, yeah, whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I don't know how that plays out. It's kind of like, it's analogous to the other big question, which is if Donald Trump is the nominee on the Republican side, which could very well be the case, probably will be the case. It's like, like the debates. Like, you have this gentleman, Bernie Sanders, running against the biggest asshole ever. And it's like, so how does that play out? Like, do people say like, you know, oh my God, like, you know, like, look at Bernie Sanders, that wimp not fighting back? Or do they say, look at that asshole? I don't know. I don't know how that works because we've never seen that before. So, you know, you just have to try it. It's like, you know, it's like putting 2 rabid animals in a gunny sack and just hope. It's an experiment. You know, sorry, Bernie.
That's kind of a segue to what I wanted to ask you to riff more about. And I'm thinking about FDR and his election and third term. And so I'm thinking, well, people at that time were really plugged into issues of, you know, the government responsibility to people. Can you say more about why you're saying this is a first?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I mean, you know, in the book, I get into this into more detail than the limited pages I flashed by really quickly, which you would only be able to see in great detail if you actually bought the book. But in 1980, I think, is a really pivotal election in our lifetimes because the election of Ronald Reagan really marks the beginning of the end of the social contract in the United States, the way that we knew it. You know, before Ronald Reagan was elected, we still had a sense as Americans, even if we were conservative or or libertarian or independent-minded, and we didn't believe in big government, that nevertheless, if our neighbors, our friends, our fellow citizens were in trouble, they needed help. Like, you know, if like they were sick, they lost their job, their house burns down, they shouldn't live outside. You know, it's like people come together and help each other out. And that was kind of the core of the New Deal and the Fair Deal and all of the traditional democratic anti-poverty programs that kind of culminate with LBJ's War on Poverty. And that ended with Ronald Reagan. I remember he said that everybody's individual, that the collective interest was best served by everybody individually, selfishly looking out for themselves. And I don't know how's that working out for you. And so what's happened is that, you know, Reagan really did a reset that Democrats accepted. You know, I mean, that was the Bill Clinton years too. And to some extent, the Barack Obama years. I mean, I want to give Obama a little bit of credit for the Affordable Care Act, only a little bit of credit. Because, sorry, no public option, only a little bit of credit. But aside from, except for the ACA, you know, Democrats have bought into this idea that, you know, big government is a bad thing, except when it comes to dropping bombs on Muslims, and big government's good for that. But when it comes to actually bailing out people, helping people who need help, that is on the way out. Now, Bernie Sanders is a reset. Bernie Sanders is arguing that everybody needs help. People who are poor deserve help. People who are working class deserve higher wages. And that we have certain rights just by being human beings living in a very wealthy industrial economy. I mean, it's true. Like, if you live in Mali or Eritrea, it's kind of hard to argue politically that your country should provide you with a free college education and also free health care, because government probably can't afford it. But this is the United States, and we're being told by the powers that be, by the media, that the stuff that you know, Bernie Sanders wants, like, for example, free college tuition and Medicare for all, is something that is incredibly, like, wild and crazy, and however would we ever be able to afford all this? It's like, really? Like, every other industrialized country has it, and a lot of non-industrialized countries have it too. So how come we live in this shitty country that can't have it? This is why I think Hillary Clinton is in big trouble, because, you know, American elections are won traditionally by optimists who project a positive vision of America and say, yes, you know, like Barack Obama, yes, we can, hope and change. You know, Hillary Clinton is like, well, we can keep what we got maybe if the Republicans don't fuck us over too much, and like, don't hope for too much, no change. It's like, that's not going to sell, you know? And it shouldn't sell, because it's stupid. It's really stupid. And I mean, you know, it's like if we were living in a poor country, or we're living in a country that like had a 3% tax rate, so we're keeping all of our income, and we're not like invading every country, so we have lots of money. You know, it's like, then it's like I could see like, well, you know, it's not like we're spending, you know, 54% of our federal tax dollar on invading other countries, which is what we're doing. It's like, it's just kind of a ridiculous argument. So in terms of the reset, and I'll take your question after that, Bernie Sanders is, all he's arguing for, I mean, this is why he's an important moment. I mean, like I said, he's not perfect, but he reflects this reset to bringing us back to sanity. It's the pendulum has swung back. It's like the Reagan years are behind us. The Democratic Party has moved to the left. The Republican Party is going to have to, they don't know where they are, but Ted fucking Cruz. You know, I'm ashamed to be a Ted. Okay, yeah.
Yes, I'm waiting for that pendulum to start swinging back. I have two questions, and I'll just say them both and then I'll sit down. Right. One is, who would you like to see him choose as a vice presidential candidate?
It's funny, I was just talking to someone about that earlier this evening. You know, I mean, like, I think an obvious choice is probably not the right choice. Like, an obvious choice is Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, I mean, it also, like, but it's kind of like, you know, I have worked for campaigns, but first of all, I don't think she would want it, because if she'd wanted to be, she's willing to be vice president, you have to be willing to be president, and she didn't want to run. And, you know, Bernie wouldn't have run if Elizabeth Warren were running. That's a fact. He only decided to run after Elizabeth Warren decided not to. And he felt that these same issues needed to be articulated. And also, you know, you just think about it politically. It's like, well, you know, he's from Vermont, she's from Massachusetts, both New England states. You need someone, you know, you want an Ohioan or a, I'm available, or Floridian or someone like that. And, but it really would be nice to have like a woman, a person of color, a woman of color. You know, look, we have 320 million people. We have lots of those who are qualified. You know, it's always part of the reason why it kind of disgusts me that we keep going back to the same families for you know, like, sorry, Jeb, and Hillary. Like, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like someone was saying, told me a couple days ago. It's like, you know, sorry, Hillary, you know, the presidency is not a family business. It just isn't. And just for the record, by the way, I just want to say, like, look, a woman president is 225 years overdue, okay, for sure. It's you know, if she were slightly shittier than Bernie Sanders, I would support her. You know, I do weigh it. I do think a woman should be president. It's just, she's really shitty, you know, I mean, like really, really shitty. So, I mean, and that's her fault, you know. I mean, she could have like changed. She could have had a different career, you know. She could have 2 or 3 like progressive things she'd done over the course of 40 years to point to, but she doesn't, and that's not my fault. That's her fault, you know. So, you know, but hey, you know, the $120 million that she collected from Wall Street banks with Bill, it's like, we'll keep her warm at night. So, I'm sorry, what was your question again?
So no other specifics that you can think of, like people?
I'm sorry?
People that you might.
Oh, well, now
I knew you were going to.
I have no fucking idea who we should pick. I mean, who does the first Democratic Socialist presidential nominee in American history choose as vice president? Are you serious? I don't know that. I mean, like, that's beyond my pay grade. I have no idea. Jerry Brown? I don't know. It's like, no clue. Yeah, he's too old. Yeah, he's too old. He'll balance out the age difference by being even older. Although he's super vibrant too. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I have no idea. I mean, you would definitely want someone who's, who balances the ticket, who brings in a swing state, someone who brings in a different demographic, and who you're not terrified of becoming president, a la Sarah Palin, if Bernie has a heart attack. Yeah.
Well, I would suggest Senator Nina Turner is great, female senator. But anyways, I was wondering, I'm with Bernie 2016 TV, all volunteer, and we've gotten shut down a whole bunch of times off YouTube for showing, public debates and stuff like that. And so I was just wondering, what do you think about what narrative that mainstream media is pushing and how much that has an effect on, people not knowing what a democratic socialist is and things of that sort?
To quote Hillary Clinton, I'm very glad you asked that question. Yeah, no, the media blackout has been kind of remarkable, right? I mean, I live in New York, so I read the New York Times, and, every time Bernie, it's like the entire campaign has been covered by the New York Times as in, how will Hillary repel this asshole Bernie Sanders? When there was the first huge front page photo of Bernie Sanders they ran was from above him, right on his bald spot. The thing was huge. It took up like 3/4 of the page. I'm like, really? Like, really? It's like, I bet Hillary has a bald spot. I mean, like, I have a bald spot. Like, it was just, and it's been relentless. I mean, the blackout has been crazy. All the nominations, all the endorsements, like the Des Moines Register, Washington Post, New York Times, have all gone to Hillary. They are... I was watching Chris Matthews, who normally can be counted upon on MSNBC for some hard-hitting questions. He's in the bag for Hillary. He's like asking, giving tips to Hillary's people on the air about how to fight Bernie. Like, shouldn't you point out the fact that he's never been a member of the Democratic Party, that he's really a socialist? Americans are never going to vote for a socialist. He's never been a Democrat. How should he win the Democratic nomination? But what's so amazing about this year is that it's so anti-establishment that shit not only doesn't work anymore, but it hurts, I think. It's like if I were, it's like if I were Bernie Sanders, I wouldn't want one of those endorsements this year. 4, 8 years ago, I would want them. I'd need them. But now I think it just makes you look bad. I think being attached to the establishment in any way is trouble. You want to be, it's already bad enough that he's in the US Senate, that he knows those people. It always makes, what, sorry? He's trying to get out of the Senate. Yeah, it's true, right, that's right. Yeah, I think, he is a little bit like a dog who's caught a car, though, right? I mean, nobody thought he was going to get this far. Like him and Trump have that in common. They're like, hey, let's see how this goes. It's like, what? You mean, my polls are up? It's like, so, the mainstream media thing. Also, it amazes me, this Iowa thing. I mean, okay, so the Bernie spin is like, we came down from 41-point deficit in Iowa, which is true. But that's also like that was going to happen once you had name recognition. But what everyone forgets is that the day before the election, Bernie was supposed to lose by 3 points. That's a fact. And people always talk about like polls don't matter, they're not right. That's bullshit. Polls are always right. It's like Donald Trump when he said that Ted Cruz cheated in Iowa. He's right. He's totally right. And that is why the polls were wrong. Polls are always right. That's science. I mean, believe me. And so with the fact that Bernie was able to come to a tie, it's a tie, Iowa was a tie, it's an amazing thing. I mean, this is a guy who overcame tremendous odds. Like, Hillary Clinton has been working on this for 8 years. And, he just got into it. He didn't have this ground organization. He didn't have this much money. She has the, what does she have? She has the Democratic National Committee. She has Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She has everything in the bag. MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, everything. And he pulled to a complete, I mean, they're shitting their pants. They can't believe this is happening. They cannot understand it. That's why they're freaking out. They're freaking out at the Donald Trump thing too, but it's the same thing. I don't think they really realize exactly how pissed people are. Like really, really pissed. And, you know, I mean, anger is a beautiful thing. I mean, I've always said that the problem with the United States is that we're not angry enough. But, yeah. So, yeah.
Into Afghanistan and back, you talked about America as the great disruptor. I wonder if you could go into that more and what Bernie might be able to do to take that away.
Okay, so the book that the gentleman referred to is a book I wrote in 2002 about the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, and I went there in November of 2001 and December of 2001, called To Afghanistan and Back. And in there I talked about how American foreign policy seems to be based on this idea of disruption. We're not trying to win wars anymore, like the idea of World War II, where you try to win a war. Like, if you notice, we pretty much lose every war since World War II. You know, we lost Korea, we lost Vietnam, we kind of lost the Gulf War in the end. You know, we kind of lose them all. We're losing Afghanistan right now. We lost Iraq to ISIS, and so on and so on. And I think, so that's kind of and this is basically a policy of trying to disrupt economic regional superpowers that are potential rivals to the United States economically. So, for example, Iran, the natural leader of the Middle East, has been subjected to trade sanctions for many, many years. And China is viewed as a major threat by the United States on the Pacific Rim, even though really it's not expansionist and there's no reason to say that. Russia is constantly targeted by the U.S. And Brazil in Latin America as regional emerging superpower. And so the U.S. is always trying to contain these emerging regional superpowers. And I think this is where Bernie Sanders is weak as a candidate. He doesn't articulate much of a foreign policy. He talks a lot more about domestic than foreign policy. And the stuff that he talks about seems to be a lot of his cut and pasted from other candidates like Hillary Clinton. Must destroy ISIS, keep the drones going. He voted for the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. You know, he's not a pacifist, and he has said so. And I mean, I guess I'm not either, to the extent that I would, if another country invaded the U.S., I would kick their ass. But otherwise, I feel like we should never invade another country for no reason. But Bernie's not as far left as I am on foreign policy. And so there's, you know, I think a lot of people have a certain, on the right and on the left, kind of don't really know where Bernie's coming from on foreign policy. And if I were running his campaign, I would say he needs to articulate that in a far more detailed way. I mean, people who are national security hawks need to know that he's going to defend the U.S., and people on the left, progressives, need to know, like, well, exactly what are you not going to fight, and what are you going to fight, and how will you do it? You know, I mean, I asked him when I interviewed him whether he would cut defense spending. And at first he sort of like launched into like, yes, but then he kind of pulled back and he's like, well, we'd look at it very carefully and then, you know, there would probably be cuts. You know, I want a more dramatic, like the defense budget is so crazy bloated. I mean, it could be, I think, slashed by 95% tomorrow and we wouldn't lose a thing. I mean, no one, you know, the U.S. hasn't been invaded since 1812. Okay, so I think we're in good shape. No one's coming, just saying. Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering what you thought, if you thought that if Hillary Clinton wins the nomination, would Bernie endorse her, or would he possibly run as a third-party candidate? And if he did, possibly to the Green Party or something, could he win, or does he need to have the Democratic brand to win?
Yeah, I asked him about that. He said that he decided to run. You know, he's never been a member of the Democratic Party. He's always he's caucused with the Democrats, but he's been an independent in the Senate. He's never believed in being a Democratic member of the Democratic Party. But this year he decided that he was going to run as a Democratic candidate because he just felt like it was the only way to get attention. I'm convinced that, first of all, he's not going to run as a Green Party candidate because there is a Green Party candidate. There is Jill Stein. So that's all taken care of. You know, it's like Jill Stein's an excellent candidate. You know, she's not viable in terms of money and stuff.
She's pretty much implicated in recent days that she'd be holding a place for Bernie Sanders to run the Green Party if he wanted one. I've seen.
That's kind of sad to me.
I'm telling you, it says that.
Yeah, the Green Party, they have a lot of potential, but they don't know what they're doing, I think. But the thing is, I think that I don't think Bernie Sanders will run as an independent if he does not secure the Democratic nomination. I think he's making a run, he's doing it. He's a very straightforward dude. I mean, he's not like Donald Trump, like playing the angles, okay? Like I said, what you see is what you get. This guy, whatever you think of him, he has integrity, no question. I mean, he's running for the Democratic nomination. It's like, if people want to nominate Hillary Clinton instead, Hillary Clinton will be the nominee. That's it. And he will, and he's already said he would he would endorse her. Ugh. So let's not let that happen.
Would you comment on progressive radio and how that, I know it was very popular here in Seattle until it was taken off, and then Tom Hartman was adopted by a university here in their radio program. But Tom Hartman has had Bernie on every Friday for how many years? So could you comment about that phenomenon in terms of stirring up some of this social interest and anger?
Well, I love radio, and in fact, I had a talk radio show in Los Angeles for many years and miss it terribly. It was the only thing I was actually talented at doing. It's just, I can just talk and talk and talk. You hadn't noticed? Look, let's face it, talk radio in the United States is really right, it's owned by right-wingers. I mean, right-wingers own this big time. Progressive talk radio here is like a shell. There was Air America, and they made this huge mistake, which was instead of recruiting progressive, left-wing, experienced talk radio hosts, they got a bunch of boring comedians. Al Franken, who would have ever thought he would be boring? But he was on the radio. He sucked. And he was a really funny stand-up guy, but he was a terrible talk radio show guy, because it's a different skill set. Look, I think inherently there can be great progressive radio and talk, and obviously that potential has yet to be even, I think, scratched. But look, we're living in a country that has, if you think about it, just if you have a major presidential election with a lot of interest, you might get voter turnout of 58% in a presidential race. In a local election, you're lucky to get 10 or 15% of the vote. And what does that tell you? I mean, what, are the French who have like 90% turnout, or the Danes who have 90% turnout, or the Germans who have 90%, are they better people? Are they more interested in politics than we are? Of course not. The reason people aren't showing up at the polls is because their politics aren't represented by the Democrats or the Republicans. That, we're seeing that now. These socialists who voted in Iowa, okay, a lot of socialists. It's like, there's a lot of socialists in the United States. I'm more of a commie myself, but that's like, I think that there's, there's this huge segment of the marketplace of ideas that is not being addressed. And that's certainly true in media. I've always held that, on the op-ed pages of newspapers, on radio, you could have far-left politics that would be successful, viably successful, but you just have to put it on the air. But we don't have a free press here. We don't have free media. We don't. It's no different than living in a dictatorship. It's just that you have a different set of ideas that are acceptable. And believe me, as a left-wing political cartoonist, I can tell you all these stories about things that you cannot publish in an American newspaper. I mean, like, for example, you cannot publish anything against free trade in an American newspaper. It will not get published. I don't care, like, anything. No cartoon, no column, forget it, never. Anti-TPP, anti-NAFTA, anti-WTO, never. It's like impossible. Yeah.
Bernie and Edward Snowden. Does Bernie get what Edward Snowden was trying to teach us all? And if he became president, would he do something about it?
Yes and maybe. I talked to him about Snowden. He said that he greatly appreciates what Snowden did and that he made us aware of what's going on, blah, 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 blah. So I held him, I asked him, would you pardon him? Or, in my view, give him the ticker tape parade down Broadway that he deserves. And on that point, he hemmed and hawed. I got this sense that he feels that Snowden should take some sort of deal, like maybe do a short prison sentence or something, pay some sort of price for violating the law. Look, like I said, he's not perfect. I totally disagree with this. I mean, Edward Snowden is a hero, period. And in my view, anybody who participated in domestic surveillance of the of American citizens, which has been repeatedly ruled by the Supreme Court to be illegal, dating back to the 1960s, should be in prison. Not Edward Snowden, but you know, I mean, this is where you're dealing with the fact that, you know, Bernie Sanders is a U.S. senator. He's in the mainstream of the system. He is not a radical, crazy political cartoonist. He feels that he has to make these accommodations. I think that it's a mistake. I think he should just, I mean, if Rand Paul can say that, can defend Edward Snowden, then Bernie Sanders should be able to.
I have two questions. One is, can you compare and contrast this election with the 2008 election of Barack Obama and hope and change and all that? And also, given how a moderate like Barack Obama was essentially stonewalled by Congress, by Republicans, do you think Bernie could be effective as president? Could he actually get anything done?
Yeah, I'll answer that second question first because I like it better. The short answer is I don't think it really matters. You know, I read a comment that someone posted online under an article about the race, and you know, I liked what he said. He said, you know, Bernie Sanders might not get anything done, but you know what I feel pretty confident is that he would try. And you know what? That counts for a lot. You know, Barack Obama never tried to push through a public option. You know, I would have liked to see them let the Republicans vote no. I mean, by the way, it's good politics. It sets up the attack ads for the future. Yeah, they voted no to help old people who were dying. Yeah, it's I don't even know, like, where, I mean, Obama to me was a huge disappointment. He tossed the Health Care Act to Congress and let them draft this thing, which turned out to just be like Hillary Care 2.0, and it's like, just, you know, like, hey, let's, you know, the insurance companies in Hartford are like, hey, we're gonna build, you know, new executive restrooms. They'll be gold. It'll be awesome. It's you know, more money for them. Okay, let me compare, and I'll go back to the first question because I'm kind of punting on the second one. So comparing and contrasting, the difference, the similarities here are really in the primary race, not in the general election, because quite frankly, if Barack Obama, even being, you know, black, couldn't beat John McCain running with Sarah Palin, I don't know what to say. I mean, it was like, he was a terrible candidate. I mean, you know, it's like he should have had stamped on his forehead, like, best used before 2000. He was done, you know? I mean, he was just too old. He was no longer the maverick. He was running with Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin, remember her? Yeah, and so anyway, this to me, like, but I do think, but the similarities are interesting between the Hillary versus Obama versus the Hillary versus Bernie. Now, in both cases, she is a charmless candidate. okay? I mean, I'm sorry, it's just true. I mean, I've met both of them. You know, it's true. Everything they say about Bill is true. Like, I've met Bill 3 times. First time I met him, he's like, tell me a little bit about, about yourself. And then, like, okay, 6 years later, I walk up to him, he's like, Ted Rall, you're that cartoonist. It's like, you grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'm like, that's really creepy, but kind of awesome. And he fixes you with those crazy eyes. You're like, I love you. And, you know, it's what people said about Hitler, but I find it hard to believe. But with Hillary, she never had that. I've met her in person. She's just doesn't, you know, personality really counts in politics. And, you know, Obama and Sanders, they do have it, right? They have a sunny disposition. They have they had and have an optimistic message. And in both cases, what's really fascinating to me is that Hillary is selling the same exact sales pitch that she sold in 2008 and failed with, which was competence and experience. Don't worry, I met everyone, I know Putin, you know, it's like, really, does he like you calling him by his last name? It's like, you know, it's like, I know how to use the switchboard. I've been in the White House for 8 years. Like, you know, it's like, I know everyone. And it's like, okay, I mean, and she's like central casting of like a hard ass, like first female president from like a sci-fi dystopian movie, like Jodie Foster in Elysium, or Hunger Games president, you know, like that's, or you know, like, or what's the other one where it's like, oh God, the woman who was in, come on, I was trying to think about this earlier. The woman who, Leo DiCaprio in Titanic, Kate Winslet, when she's like president in some sci-fi dystopian thing that I saw. Anyway, they dress the same, and she's got like the Dr. Evil suits and all that. And she's got the world's ugliest necklace, right? I mean, $120 million, she's got this necklace right now that's like, she's got this like little doodad that hangs down there, and every stone's different. And I'm like, you look like shit, Hillary. Her hair looks great. I mean, her hair's amazing. Finally, right? 40 years in politics, she's got the hair. And, you know, I kind of miss the chipmunk cheeks because she's had little work and little Michael Jackson-y, but anyway, she started white, so it's okay. Come on, I'm Ted Rall. You had to. That was going to happen. So I think that yeah, this is like people like so. Yeah, so it is a replay of 2008 in so many interesting ways. I just didn't think, I mean, honestly, I kind of gave her more credit. I kind of thought before that there would be something new here. The only thing that she's doing differently is that she is attempting to co-opt parts of Bernie's message. She did not attempt to co-opt Obama's message in 2008, but she's trying to steal the stuff about like, oh, we'll make college more affordable. Yeah, you know, college more affordable, college free. I like free better. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, we're gonna do, you know, we're gonna try to like make healthcare, you know, more affordable. You know, as opposed to free for everybody. So, but she is attempting that. But, you know, I hate to say it. It's like, you know, it's the first rule of PR in Madison Avenue. If you don't have a good message, you got nothing. And like, honestly, I mean, if I were paid $1 million, I'm fascinated by this to me. I mean, like if she paid me $1 million to try to save her ass right now, I don't know how. Because it's like, she doesn't have a message to sell. She doesn't. It's like, there's not a narrative that you can spin. You can't say, well, there's these things that she did, you know, that will appeal to the electorate, or, you know, I mean, there's so many things she needed to do 8 years ago, like apologize for voting for the Iraq War, or, you know, pushing, I mean, she knew she was running for president. I mean, my biggest brief against her is actually not the fact that she's a right-winger. It's the fact that I don't think she's like very she doesn't have her finger on the pulse of the people. I feel like she doesn't understand things. Like, for example, she voted for the Iraq War because she thought that that was going to be really successful and popular, and that everyone was going to be behind it. Whereas a million normal people walked in the streets because they knew it wasn't going to work. And so why do they know more than she does, and we're supposed to vote for her? And she gets $120 million? I mean, I'm not into that. It's kind of baffling. It's true that really she should have been able to destroy Bernie Sanders. She had this institutional, all these institutional advantages, and she blew it. She had the same institutional advantages against Barack Obama in 2008. He didn't think he was going to be elected in 2008. He was running to get national attention for a possible future run. Really, maybe if he was lucky, he'd be vice president that time. He wasn't thinking he'd be elected. It's like she blew it. And then, John Edwards. But that's a whole different thing. Yeah.
Quick question. Primaries are coming up. Well, we're in the primaries right now. Now, Bernie's going to an area, once he's done with New Hampshire, where the demographics are a lot different. And Hillary is way ahead in the polls. If you were Bernie's campaign manager, how would you approach a winning strategy in, the South, South Carolina, and other states that are coming up here soon? What would you do?
Well, conventional wisdom is, and I mostly agree with it, is that this has been every candidacy has a weakness and, or multiple weaknesses. And look, Bernie should have gotten far more behind Black Lives Matter much sooner, much faster. Because what's funny is, he believes it. Right? He always has. He was active in the civil rights movement back in the 60s. He marched on Washington. This is him. He is a member. He participated with SNCC. This is not outside of his purview. And somehow he's kind of neglected it. Look, the Southern Democratic primaries are heavily reliant on black voters. So this is about making the case that he's the best candidate for them. Right now, I think black voters in the South are kind of leaning toward Hillary because of the Bill Clinton connection. They remember him fondly, although I don't know why. He certainly wasn't that good for black people. But he knew how to campaign down there. I think that things are going to change as soon as the New Hampshire campaign is over. Let's not forget, you don't really focus on a campaign, on an election, until it's kind of upon you a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Super Tuesday is March 1st. You don't have to pay attention if you're in a Super Tuesday state until really February 20th. He has plenty of time to campaign. I think African Americans will listen to his message. I would like to hear a comprehensive, meaningful program that Bernie would put together and announce that would talk about serious, criminal justice reform. Look, it's crazy that we have the highest incarceration rate in the world, and of course, disproportionately black. Vast majority of these people need to come out and get job training and be brought back into society. We just need to get rid of the prison industrial complex. The war on drugs has to come completely to an end. This is all stuff that Bernie should be able to do and get behind. But if I were him, I'd say this is about the economic message coupled with the criminal justice message. And he did say that we had a racist police system, which we do. And personally, I think every cop in the country should be fired, and we should start from scratch and rehire them. But he's kind of tacked away from that. I think he needs to get back to it, and just not really to win the South because it's right, just because it's right. Okay, so any more? I guess that's it. All right, thank you very much.
So thanks, and just a reminder that Ted Rall will be signing books in the North Lobby.